Some things that I, recommend looking at reframes, you can change if to when. So we say if a lot. If to when is a really simple reframe, and you can't just like change the first word, right? It changes the structure of the communication, and that's good. The second reframe that I encourage people to do is change from anyone to everyone. Anyone feels very isolating. It's not very safe. Whereas you say, for everyone who's ready to go do this, this is where we go. The last of these three reframes is to switch from ending on a statement to using really good, thoughtful questions. Statements are things we don't feel compelled to respond, to do anything with. Like when there's a question at the end, our brains feel like we need to close that loop.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks, Real Challenges, Experts Advice. The podcast is dedicated to helping those transitioning into customer success and early career customer success managers. I'm your host, Byron Toruño, passionate about customer success, a customer success nerd. What are we going to be talking about? Who is the guest for today's episode? Hold your horses. Let's go step by step because do you know that the average person makes around 35,000 decisions every day? Most of them on the subconscious level, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a couple of minutes. From small decisions like what to eat, which is sometimes so complicated, especially if you live outside of the city. But okay, that's another deal. From large ones like how to interact with customers. Our brains rely a lot on the automatic processes, same as us as customer success managers. We do a lot of tasks and we want just all of them to be done by clicking here and there. Our brain works really similar. So, how to handle all of that information, right? We as customer success managers, we need to understand how the brain works when making decisions. I think that's crucial, especially for when it comes to communication, when it comes to effective communication and how to influence our customers. And that's the topic for today's episode. How much do we know about our brain, how when it makes decisions? And for that, we have Melina Palmer, is an applied behavioral economist with a passion for helping everyone from around the world. Hey, I'm in Germany to understand what behavioral economics is and how it can be applied to help everyone. And again, the word comes communicate more effectively. Melina, you have your own podcast called the Briny Business Podcast, named after your company. And currently you have 461 episodes. You also teach applied behavioral economics through Human Behavior Lab at Texas A&M University. And there's more people. Wait, you are the author of 3 books, one being this one. Melina, it's an honor, it's a pleasure, and I'm so ready to start today's conversation. Welcome to Customer Success Talks.
Oh, thank you so much. I am delighted to be here with you today.
Can you tell everyone a little bit more about your podcast and what to expect?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so the Brainy Business, as you said, has been around since summer of 2018. We now do 2 episodes a week as we've gotten
Wow.
to the, like you said, 460 plus and downloads in over 170 countries, over 1.4 million, and counting. So really love being able to communicate and share about how our brains work and how to apply that into life and business. So there are several different, I guess, like avenues, veins of interest that get categorized within the show, all having to do with how our brains really make decisions and how to present information better. So really we look at personal productivity and habits, knowing how we're going to be more productive ourselves, and understanding how we make decisions, which can apply to other people, but really thinking about optimizing that behavior. We have section that has to do with leadership, and understanding how people apply to change, how to communicate better with inside teams. We have the customer experience stuff that has to do with a lot of what I'm sure we'll be talking about today. Then we have pricing strategy and sales language, and really finally just like a foundations of behavioral economics, understanding some of the key concepts, looking at case studies across academia and organizations, and just really helping everybody to know all the cool stuff that's happening in research and brains in a way that you can actually use, instead of it feeling like that's cool, but so what, right? Like this is trying to be that so what.
That's so cool because it's from not only learning but also applying. It's also about who are we as human beings and what can we do to trigger something in a positive way, of course. Also, all of this that you just said, it translates to me to your books because you have three books, which are one I have here, and of course I'm reading this one because I think it applies more to where I am in my career right now, which is what your customers wants and can tell you. You also have other two books, what your customers, I mean, sorry, what your employees need and can tell you, and the truth about pricing, which I think pricing is also really interesting conversation. But can you tell everyone about this book, which, by the way, all the links are going to be in the description. But what will people expect when they're going to read your book?
Yeah. So, What Your Customer Wants and Can't Tell You is my first book. Yay. And so this one really is, is the first book for good reason. And thinking about as people look to apply this stuff and you think about using behavioral science, behavioral economics in your work, really, what do you need to know? And, then what are some ways to start using it? So I set it up kind of like a choose your own adventure sort of style of book, in that part one is all the important brain stuff you need to know about how it really works, understanding how it applies to business and brands, marketing, customer experience, things like that. Then in part two of the book, I picked 16 key concepts from behavioral economics, and each one gets its own chapter. So there are hundreds of rules our brains are using to make decisions all the time. I picked 16 that are applying to business as a good place to be able to start. So again, each of those has its own dedicated chapter talking a bit about the research, how you can use it. And then at the end of each of those chapters, there's a list of different, if you want to learn more about this, here's more episodes of the podcast, here's some books or, different things you can check out, as well as when you get into part three, the chapters where this will come back up again. So then part three looks at how you start applying these things. And as you mix them together, there's actually a chapter in the book called The Truth About Pricing, which, like we said, became its own book eventually later. But different ways that you can start to apply this into, novelty and storytelling, pricing and sales, thinking about testing and experimentation, and combining those concepts together to really start to use them. And then part four is just it's called Don't Get Stuck. And I think it's like 5 pages long or something. It's just like a little bit that's on that productivity, kind of personal habits and how we get stuck in our own way. I now have a TEDx talk that's kind of on those same lines. It's called There's Nothing Magical About Monday, that you can check out too. But yeah.
Yeah, I will also add your TED Talk. I forgot about that part. I'm so sorry, everyone. There's a TED Talk, super worth it to go and listen to. So after after the episode is done, go and check the description. You'll find a lot of useful information. And Melina, tell me something. How much neuroscience do you use when you wrote this book? I'm asking this because I feel when I'm reading that it's really simple to understand. It actually makes you read like fluent through all the concepts that you're presenting here. And I think that's really something that we as readers appreciate a lot. That is really
Yeah.
easy to read.
Yeah. Yeah. The And so you said how much, what do I use?
Neuroscience, but I was kidding a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. No. So I wanted to make sure I heard the right word with that. But so essentially, I have, all the books have lots and lots and lots of citations, right? So I have so many hundreds that get put into each of the books. And I have a great foundation actually that came out of the podcast. And so, I have a full episode about each of the things that became chapters in those books. So on framing, priming, surprise and delight, the pain of paying. These different aspects of human behavior all have episodes of the podcast, which had been heavily researched, to create then. So I had a good foundation to work from. And just in the world of forethought and planning, what does come up when we think about customer success and experience journeys, you have to be 10 steps ahead so much and think about what should I do today that's going to help me for this thing that I know I'm going to do down the line, or that I know my customer is going to need. What's the thing I can do now that's going to make this better for me or someone else later? So in that way, when I started doing foundational episodes of the podcast, which are the ones where it's all about a particular concept, I forced myself to make a free, just a worksheet, for each one. So framing has a worksheet, anchoring adjustment has a worksheet, each one. There are so many of them that I have now made over the years. But knowing I was going to want to do something with those down the line, and getting to the point of having to do the book or whatever, if I was going to sit down and it's like, okay, I have to make 100 worksheets, I would not want to do that at all. It would be terrible. But having something to start from that you're doing a little bit at a time, it made it much easier to then go in and edit and use. And similarly, by cataloging those citations, by being making good notes when I was doing the initial research, gave me a really good foundation when it came time to turn it into a book down the line. Whereas if it was not saved anywhere, if I hadn't been thoughtful to that, it might have been too much to even make it worth, putting in the effort for writing the book. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, is you have done research for years, and then also the podcast. Like I have learned so far a lot just by all my humble 55 episodes, now 400 plus all the research. I think that being ahead is something that, of course, we need as customer success managers. Also, that translates to me as being strategic, also being futuristic. So it's just obvious that everything is in this book and all of the other three books that I will get to read at some point. And Melina, I wanted to ask you to start with the basics about how the brain works. But first, what is your definition of behavioral economics?
Sure. Yeah. I like to say that if traditional economics and psychology had a baby, you'd have behavioral economics.
I love that.
Really, the reason that the field came about is that traditional economics assumes logical people making rational choices and everything they do all the time. And it's based on what someone decided is logical, right? And just being human, that's not how it works, right? We have the best of intentions. We know what we should do, eat right, exercise, whatever else. We have goals and things. We don't always do what we're supposed to, right? And things go a little bit off. And so what you end up in that way is, economic models that are set up to predict what people should do versus what they actually do. And so when you incorporate psychology, understanding the brain and decision making, aspects of neuroscience, motivation science, philosophy, all sorts of really cool stuff coming in together with psychology and economics, you find these rules that the brain is using to make decisions that can be used to better predict what people will actually do. And really, what I do is helping people in business to be aware of the ones that really apply to them as they start to think about communicating, and be able to message in a way that makes it more likely that people are going to buy in, whether that's, employees buying in, customers buying products and services, being loyal and like raving fans versus just sort of like a complacent buyer or someone that can be difficult to work with along the way. As you said in the intro, research shows we make an average of 35,000 decisions a day, and understanding the rules that are being used by that subconscious brain to make those decisions makes it much better. It's easier if you work with those than if you fight against them.
If you- This is super, super interesting because you use also the word predict several times in awareness. So if we stay here just a little bit, I feel that as I'm really passionate about customer success, but I'm also really curious, Melina. So I'm really curious into cultural side of things, and I'm starting being curious about the behavioral science, and but I never saw this as I'm able to predict something by doing something. I was more into the awareness side for even myself, because if you're able to predict something based on an idea that you have or an action or a word that you use, especially in situations like writing an email or maybe having a negotiation conversation there. How is that attached to the behavioral economics? Why predicting is that important for you?
Oh yeah, it really is everything. And when we think about, so in behavioral science, we really work in a space of nudges, nudging behavior, like a little thing that might adjust. And there are, six different categories for what nudges are and the different types. We won't get into too deep on that. But essentially, one big piece here is knowing that we should be expecting error because humans make mistakes. That's the E in nudges. And G being that you give some sort of feedback to kind of help keep people on the track or on path. One of the easiest examples of this being, you think about driving a car. There are so many little nudges within just that driving experience. One of them being if you forget to put on your seatbelt, it dings at you, right? It makes a noise to alert you to the fact that you have not done this thing that you probably want to do. Because while most of the time it doesn't really matter, at the time you need it, if you forgot, it's going to be a problem for you, right? No good. And
Absolutely.
so we think about people had to at the manufacturing level, right, to know people are going to make this mistake, even though because we get busy, we get distracted, we're like getting kids in the car, doing all the things. And so you need that alert to help remind you. Similarly, like your refrigerator might start to make a really annoying noise when it's time to change a filter or something on the water, if you have water in the door, or things on the microwaves do this and things as well. So the manufacturer had to predict that people will make this error enough and that they would want to adjust, for safety reasons, to then set it up so that it will have the right sensors, that it notifies you, that it makes the noise. And you can't have everything make a noise, right? Or light up or do something, because then we just ignore it all because there's way too much going on. So understanding to prioritize what's going to be most important in the moment, to know how we would be best able to notify people about that and factoring in different senses, right? So they went with the light and the sound, but it could be like the chair buzzes or something, right? Like all sorts of things could happen. And so, how do you notify and why and when and for how long and you can't have it be everything. So those areas of thoughtfulness are really, really important. You need to be thinking then, and someone had to design that way before you were in the car and actually forgot to buckle your seatbelt, right? And so those pieces really come into play when it comes to customer experience. So we think, are people going to have the their ID number, or are they going to have something they need when they go to fill out a particular form? Are they going to have the awareness or the time dedicated? So often people put way too many things on a form you're asking someone to fill out. And it's not actually necessary in the moment, but it's just all there, right? So if we say for what they need to do in this particular context, in the mindset they're going to be in, what do we really need to get them to the next like little step in this process of doing work with us, and what can come later if we need it at all, and how might we deal with that then. So website experience, phone experience, all sorts of omni-channel stuff comes into play as you start to think about who you're talking to, what you want them to do, where they're going to get stuck, where you should nudge to help keep them on the right path, and then what behavioral intervention can be placed. That's really what all the work of behavioral science is.
I love that. And I can see why you're so passionate and have so many resources out there. It's so interesting, and I'm assuming that it also changes as time comes. Maybe when you started, there's a lot of new findings. There's different behaviors going on, especially with media out there. But I love this because sometimes when we are in a call with a customer, either optimizing the product, or either in a business review, or even writing an email, I noticed that I tend to send too many call to actions for them,
Mm.
like sending them in a whole email a lot of actions for them to take, where I really need to prioritize which word that you use into which one will actually, either they will actually do because it's easy and it will make them more successful, and which ones I can leave for other interactions. Because if that's done, okay, so that opens the door into, okay, I show you, if you do this, that's successful. Let me show you a little bit more. And even during the call, body language shows you that they are already like, okay, don't tell me more. I already have enough.
Hmm.
So it's interesting how we are able to make some mistakes, and we can then predict over that, and then kind of start moving the needle into where we want them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, our because of how our brains are set up, right? Because with those 35,000 decisions, we really have, so the brain operates in two systems. It's in the scientific literature, talk about a system one, system two. I just like to talk about, subconscious, conscious processing because that's easy for people. But essentially, that subconscious brain is doing the bulk of the buying and decision making. It's fast automatic processing that's just go 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 kind of along the way. We get into this slower processing in the conscious space, and things kind of, we like to think that everything we're doing is on this logical conscious level, and it's just not. Right, so much is happening behind the scenes. The problem is the conscious and subconscious brains don't speak to each other. They don't speak the same language. They don't connect properly. So even when you ask people, like in a focus group, like, what would you like? Or you do a survey, and why did you buy this thing or not that thing? And if we add baking soda to our toothpaste, are you going to want to get it? And they're like, yeah, yeah, of course I would, or whatever. Like on that logical conscious level, we think we're going to want to do something for a certain reason, but that's not what's actually doing the work, taking the action. And there's this really weird thing that happens when we sit down and put on our like work planning hat, right? So in that thing, you sit down and say, okay, like, if I was a customer, if I was a human person buying this, how might I behave? And you totally forget how you actually like to buy and be communicated to, and things that as a customer, as a human person, you get emails all the time or requests on LinkedIn or see ads, and you think, ugh, yuck, spam, gross, no way, right? Like immediate delete, right? You can see those all the time. Those are people writing those, right? And you get the weird pitch and it comes off so awkward. And like, how often are you actually sending that type of communication when you're thinking about how you would want to be communicated to? But the stuff your conscious brain plans and thinks is just really different than how we actually act and behave and buy. So being able to separate that and be both, as a consumer, be more aware of what you're doing, right? I end every episode of the podcast with be thoughtful. It's my email signature. It's all my books end with it. It's really the kind of mantra of the company. If you stop and be a little bit more thoughtful, like, why did I want to delete this email? Why did I open this one? Why is this cereal on that shelf instead of this other one? I wonder why this is over here. Why'd they do this in this ad? Why'd I notice this and not that? You can then start to apply that, as you understand some of these concepts of behavioral economics, into the way that you might communicate in a more effective way.
And Melina, as per what I'm understanding, the system one, which is the subconscious side, is the one that is mainly mostly active, is the one that is can receive a lot of information. Might not be that accurate, but it's the one that we use a lot. How can we use that in our favor as customer success managers, knowing this?
Yeah. So they are both active essentially all the time. There's just one has more processing power. And you're right. It's that system one subconscious. It's doing the bulk of the decision making, right? So, and the rules that it's using to make decisions are what the foundations of behavioral economics and behavioral science, those concepts I was talking about, come into play. So let's share a couple of them to kind of show you how this works. So one being, and the first concept chapter in what your customer wants and can't tell you is on framing. And I come out and say there's a reason it's first, in that I think it's an easy one for people to start using. And it's essentially that how you say something matters more than what you are saying. It comes into play with numbers and language and all sorts of things. So with this, if you imagine, we'll say that you're wake up at a hotel, you're going to order some room service, and they have a yogurt parfait on the menu, and you're super excited because, for our example, you love a yogurt parfait, so you can't wait to get one. But you see there are two, and they're almost identical. The only difference on the descriptions is that one is labeled as being 90% fat free and the other as 10% fat. So which one do we want to buy? Are we like compelled to go get?
Oh my God.
Uh, so you're laughing. I think you have an answer. It's probably what everyone says.
I mean, just 90%,
Fat
right?
free,
Because
right?
the number is bigger.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and logically, we know they're the same thing, right? 90% fat free, 10% fat. It's, two sides of the same thing, but one feels so different than the other one, right? We hear them completely differently. 90% fat free feels like, what a healthy, awesome choice I'm making for myself. And like 10% fat, you're like, ugh, that's gross. I don't want to eat that. Yuck, right? So the way you present that fact, that information, it's like, 4 out of 5 dentists agree that our toothpaste is great, right? It's like, so one dentist out of 5 says that like people would be better off using nothing compared to your toothpaste. Like, what's the flip of that other thing, right? Or if you say most people use this, or 90% of dentists agree, 80% of dentists agree on that. You go, like, I don't like that. That doesn't feel like a good number, right? So the way you frame the information has so much impact as to whether or not someone is going to buy or not. Some things that I, recommend looking at reframes, in addition to numbers, which are full of opportunity, is to go through. You can change if to when. So we say if a lot, a lot, a lot. That we say, if you're interested, let me know. If you want more information, whatever, right? If you want to call, go use my scheduling system or something. But if like the other person doesn't feel compelled to go do anything with that, it just sort of sits with an if, and it feels like it's not going to happen, right? Whereas if you say when, like when you're ready, here's where you can go find some more information. Like when you want to meet, like I can do this day and time, does that work for you? Something along those lines. The next, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, no, sorry, sorry. I'm just so like my system two right now is super active, I think, or my
Yay.
system one. I don't know. It's please
Both,
continue.
right? So yeah, that if to when is a really simple reframe. And when you go look at how often you say if, it's everywhere. And so finding those opportunities to reframe. And you can't just like change the first word, right? It changes the structure of the communication, and that's good. The second reframe that I encourage people to do is change from anyone to everyone. And this is rooted in another rule, in knowing that we humans are a herding species. So we look to other people like us to help us make a decision, to know what's a good choice. This is why things like social proof, another aspect of behavioral science, looking at ratings and reviews and testimonials, things like that, help us to make decisions on what is a good choice or not, right? So anyone feels very isolating. It's not very safe being part of an anyone. Like if anyone out there wants to buy my book, like here's where it is. Not that anybody cares, right? It feels bad. Whereas you say, for everyone who's ready to go do this, this is where we go. Looking for those herds that are going to be supporting the behavior you're trying to encourage. Where's the social proof? How many people have been there? And again, just changing something as simple as anyone to everyone. Like when I have a guest on the show who has a book, I don't say, hey, if anyone wants a copy of so and so's book, there's a link in the show notes. I say, for everyone who is so excited, when you're ready to go get your book, there's a link in the show notes, right? So we combine those two things together. The last of these three reframes that I, recommend as a great starting point is to switch from ending on a statement to using really good, thoughtful questions. So, especially if you get ghosted a lot in emails and like people aren't responding to you, statements are things we don't feel compelled to respond, to do anything with, right? To, like we said, if you have a question, let me know. Okay, right? Like it's nothing to do. But like, have I answered all your questions? What else can I help you with? Like when there's a question at the end, our brains feel like we need to close that loop, right? Even if it's to say, no, no, I don't have any questions, you answered them all. So, one, this helps to reinforce for that person, hey, they're good. They did it. They closed it. Check box of like ending on a positive note as we start to think about these moments of an experience, right? If they do have a question, they're more likely to ask it in that moment or to think about it. And if it is something like getting a meeting on a calendar or something, right? So instead of saying, I'm flexible, whatever works for you, which is terrible. You're just giving somebody a bunch of work to do. It feels like a big burden. If instead you were to say, does Tuesday at 4 happen to work for you? And if not, please let me know some other options. People are more likely to respond and say, I can't do Tuesday, but I could do Wednesday. Like, or I can't do 4, but I could do 2, right? When there's a question, something more specific, it's easier to respond to and take a little action than feeling like you gave someone this open-ended job that just, kind of ends with that endpoint.
Everyone listening or seeing us right now, I'm really curious to know how you will apply this three that Melina just gave us. Because as you were talking, Melina, I was thinking how many times I have ended with if needed. And now if
Mhm.
I say when needed, it's just my brain automatically release something and says, oh my God, it's easy to. It's so interesting. So I'm gonna start using that for my own as well. But also, I'm really curious to hear everyone when either when you're negotiating, when there's a renewal coming, difficult conversations, or business review, or just not being ghosted. I think that uh, these are really simple words that we can use to towards what we want our customers to reply back. So I'm really happy that you're giving us this, but I'm now super happy to what is going to come because if this is our subconscious, how does the conscious side works if it's slower? How can we not overwhelm that if it doesn't process that much info?
Yeah. Well, by streamlining what's going to make it through on that subconscious filter, that's a big piece, right? So, limiting the amount of things that you're asking people to like think about, really like effortful cognitive processing, is important. So, for one, like we don't just essentially like everything you think is going to run through the conscious, it's never exclusively that, right? So the gateway is through subconscious processing, and just overall making it really clear, having using simple language, making it easy for people, not giving too many choices. This cognitive load problem is what you want to avoid, so not having too much that's being bogged down in their brain, because they will bail before they get to a point of having to use more processing or something, right? It's just not worth it. And our brains are wired to stay in that status quo and avoid changing behavior. So if you make it difficult, it just won't even get there because their subconscious is going to like throw it out of the way and process anyway. And of course, there are some times where it's important to be, effortful, and we do, like that we earned it. But for most of what we're doing in business, like just make it easy. Like do what you can to streamline. And this is where that thoughtful process, up front of what you really want people to do is so important. So, like you said on the too many calls to action. And my background's in marketing, customer experience, right? So like I absolutely know the problem that comes from, feeling like you want to give all the options, all the information to make it so somebody can make that decision, right? So instead of just saying, hey, like all the information's on our website, so we'll see you there, right? That you say like, and here's our website, and you can send me this email, or you can send us you can call us, or you can send a text to this other number, or you can go over here and find us on social,
No
or
more,
you
no
can
more
do
this
this.
stuff.
Right. And so it's like, I don't want to do any of that, right? It's too much. Whereas, if you have one or two, you can like, here's this next step, and if that's not quite what you're ready for, here's another option, right? I'm a big fan of like a buy now button, a big button that's making it really clear and easy to take that next step. And then like small text underneath, like, or if you want to learn more, like, go here to learn more about it. So for those who aren't ready to buy, they have a clear and easy path that's close to a button that's drawing our attention, right? Our eyes are constantly scanning around us. So we get over there. I've been primed with this idea that most people would buy at this point, are like ready to buy, even if I want to learn some more information. And for those who are ready to buy, if you don't have another big button that's like, or learn more because you're probably not ready to buy because people aren't ready yet, right? Then we're taking people who were interested in buying and distracting them with going and learning more and feeling like they need to fact find where they might not have needed it, in that moment. So just taking the time to stop and consider what might be going on, and not, we try to debias our information all the time, in the way that we set up, you know asking people what they're going to do, right? But so often if you go in and say, so I want you to, like, you would click here, right? Look at this button. Wouldn't you click on that and not this? Like, when you ask a question like that, people can't um, give you real information, right? And so understanding, just letting someone explore. This is where so often in, experiments, you'll say, like, I want you to imagine that you are, you know someone who is looking to increase your fitness, and you need to go look for an option. You've been considering like a home gym, or maybe joining this other thing. Like, just go explore, and we're going to watch what you do, and you can be like kind of asking some follow-up questions or whatnot, see if they click the button, if they get distracted. We could do things with eye tracking and EEG scanning and skin response. There's so many things we do to test now. But knowing what we think they're going to do, why they might do it, predicting that, and putting it into the messaging, making it just easy. That's the best thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, we like easy stuff ourselves as well, right? So
Mhm.
why not show that to our customers? Mm, System two. I'm thinking I normally what I do, Melina, is that I send either two or three max something, either three call to actions, either three or two celebrating something or highlighting something. Do you think that will be also that's also a good tactic for activating system two when there's three? Is it three or two the golden number?
So there isn't a golden number of these sorts of things, fortunately or unfortunately, right? But context always matters, right? So who we're talking to, when they're getting it, what we're looking for them to do. So um, even if you think about, so there's things like an email, right? So if you send your email on a Sunday night, is different, mindset that someone is when they're reading it than if you send it on Monday morning, or Tuesday at noon, or Friday at 7, right? We are not the same all the time, and we're constantly shifting through different identities and contexts throughout the day. And so, if you're sending something to, that it has to do with, like organizing and cleaning your house, and or something, right? Like that type of messaging, if you send it on a, Tuesday, a Wednesday night, if it's like for someone else to come in and clean my house, I'm probably pretty receptive to that on Wednesday night when everything is in the thick of stuff, right? If it's like, hey, your house is probably messy. You should do more work and invest in buying this other thing right now. Like, I might not be interested. I just want to go to Instagram, right? So, the way I frame the message, the option I give someone if they're overwhelmed because it's been a really long day by 8 p.m., is different than how they're feeling at 8 a.m. and how many choices or options or even how to talk about it. And so, it really does. I always kind of joke I need either like a mug or a t-shirt that says it depends on it because it always changes. But this is where taking the time to be thoughtful, to know, even if you hear and read like of a case study or you hear something on the podcast, you read about it in a book, and says like, this is exactly how this is done, or how this worked for us. Don't expect that you can pick up and do exactly the same thing and it will work in exactly the same way, because that context matters. And this is why you want to do tests, right? You want to try things, and just don't test too many things at once. Because if you change everything, and you don't have a control group, it's not a test. You just did a new thing, right? And you won't know why something worked or what worked. So when we understand those behaviors, and maybe you say you're just going to test subject lines to see if you can get your open rates up, and you just retry, new ones, and again, run against a control. And once the open rates are up, then you can look and see about, are people clicking on my calls to action? And in one version, I'm going to test 3 different ones. And this other one, I'm just going to have one simple thing that you do, or I'm going to do a button versus a link, or I'm going to change the color of the text, or I'm going to change the size, or whether it's at the top or the bottom. Each of those is a separate test to see what works in your context with your audience and the messaging you're trying to convey.
Wow. Thank you, Melina. Thank you for
Yeah.
all of these interesting facts that you're giving us. And you're being really tactical into giving us how we can use the subconscious level and this in the conscious level in our favor. What small tweaks we can do. In my case, right now I'm working with hotels, and sometimes I work with front desk managers or receptionists as well. And are they going to answer my email when they're doing check-ins for their guests or checkouts? Like now it opens the curiosity into asking them how you organizing your days, so it can be
Mm.
more there can be more open towards receiving my emails and answering them. So I'm learning a lot. I'm really sure everyone is learning out there. All your information, Melina, is going to be in the description for today's episode, your books, your podcast, your company. And I'm really, really happy and grateful for you being here with us today. Thank you very much for your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And everyone, remember, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep improving the world of customer success. Until next time.